Hey, it's Fox from Inferno Fox Gaming. So here at Inferno Fox Gaming, we don't normally get political at all, but I want to give you guys a little bit of a heads up, a little bit of a warning, because there is a little bit of politics within today's topic, but that of course is because this could potentially impact gamers, so it's worth discussing by myself in as least a political lean as possible. Now, there was an article published on Kotaku's website by Ethan Gatch, again published on November 27th, 2024, and it was talking about the potential tariffs that may impact the game industry once Trump gets into office come around mid or end of January 2025 in the United States. The article published from Kotaku, it discusses that in the past, Trump in his first term had threatened tariffs that would have impacted costs back in 2019, and that specifically would have impacted the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series console releases. Now, with the impending second term coming, these tariffs could be coming and impact the mid-generation for Sony and Microsoft, but also, more importantly, the Switch 2 launch occurring in 2025. So we got to backtrack. Let's rewind it a little bit and discuss exactly what a tariff is. Webster's dictionary defines tariff as a schedule of duties imposed by a government on imported, or in some countries, exported goods. The charge for these take place when the material comes in to the United States and the company that is importing them or importing the materials, whatever the product is, pays the charge. This is an important note. The country where the material comes from doesn't fit the bill. Again, it's the company that's importing the material that has to pay it. It is important to note that that money that does come in does go into the U.S. Treasury, which can be used as a stopgap towards overall spending within the United States. One nice thing about Trump is he is who he says he is, both by his words and actions. When he says he'll put out tariffs, we can rest assured that he'll do it. He's done it in the past, putting a number of tariffs on China during his first term, and many of these tariffs are in effect today, even under the opposing party's presidential administration, that of course being the Biden administration. Tariffs themselves are used both as like a negotiation tactic as well as a tool to encourage domestic production of a number of products. The problem is that a large number of consumer electronics are produced in China, the country which is the main focus of Trump's tariffs. Manufacturing at a scale within the United States to match China, especially on electronics, isn't possible due to a number of limitations. This could include stuff like workers, sheer numbers, and the higher wages required for U.S. workers, as well as with like infrastructure and resources. With the costs of tariffs being charged to the companies importing in the goods to the United States, and of course, with how capitalism works, those costs will get passed on to the consumers. This excellent graphic, again from Kotaku, which they would have sourced from the Consumer Technology Association, shows the impact of what the increase in costs would be to consumers on various electronics. What needs to be highlighted is the impact on consoles as shown in the graphic here. According to this, we could see a potential 40% increase on the costs of video game consoles and the related devices. The US has been really lucky during the current 9th generation overall. The US dollar has remained strong over the last few years, which means that while the cost for like the PS5 consoles has increased in countries like Japan, where the yen is weak, the US has not seen these increases, at least to this effect. We've seen a couple little stuff like Sony Shadow price increase their PS5 controllers by $5. But Trump himself has said that there may be a potential 60% increase in tariffs for China. So just based on the graph that we've seen, as well as the general percentages, we would be seeing something like existing generational consoles like the Switch increase from $300 to $400. PS5 Pro could go from $700 to $1,000. And most important, for the upcoming Switch, the Switch 2, Super Nintendo Switch, which had been rumored to be introduced at $400, we could see that being introduced at $500 instead. Now, this Kotaku article basically warns on a number of outcomes for this, not only with the price increases, but also overall the industry, the video game industry possibly shrinking below back to where they were like over 20 years ago in like the early aughts. It could shift games quicker off of physical media and more to cloud-based gaming and streaming services. And, after all, physical games, they're often made and printed in China, and costs for these could increase from $70 to $80 or maybe even $70 to $90. And ultimately, consumer spending will cut back on extraneous purchases, which stuff like video games is the perfect example. This is a hobby. It's a hobbyist. So this all sounds like gloom and doom, right? Everything is all bad. But this is really a good canary in the coal mine for the video game industry as a whole. And it also begs the question, what can I do? What can we do as video game consumers? So one option, of course, is denial and deflect. That's not going to happen. The game industry will be fine. We're due for it to be shrunk. Survival of the fittest. It's about time the video game industry collapsed, and we're going to be happy about that. The great thing, again, as I mentioned, video games is a hobby. And we, as consumers, we can have these feelings. If the video game industry does have a collapse or something along the lines, it's a hobby. It's not anything that's going to impact day to day. The big thing, though, with tariffs and everything, just whether or not it is a collapse or, just a protracted reduction, is that what happens will just have long-term impacts on the industry itself and the trajectory of where it's going to go. Now, another thing that you, the consumer, can do is buy now. Buy now wherever possible. And companies are doing this right now. There's a lot of companies that are buying inventory of raw materials before the new presidential administration in the U.S. to take advantage of pre-tariff increases. So this means for you and I, just individual consumers, if you see Black Friday or pre-Christmas sales of games and it is feasible within your own financial budget, snag them. Snag them while you can, especially with physical media. Now is the time to buy. If you're feeling bad about making any sort of a purchase, don't, because prices will start to increase or potentially increase because, again, tariffs can be used as a negotiation tactic. And one last option is if you're interested in the new Nintendo Switch, like myself, start saving your money now. For me, I'm going to be buying this new system no matter what, because I usually don't miss out on new Nintendo consoles. This time, though, I'm going to be putting my money away slowly to ensure that I can afford a potential $500 Switch 2. Nintendo could release it at $400 and subsidize the costs themselves, though it's possible that they'll increase the cost to consumers in other ways, such as $70 new releases. Again, we've seen that with Tears of the Kingdom on the current Switch. We could also see increased costs of existing titles and or less sales. Nintendo first-party games generally don't see sales, and I wouldn't be surprised if we could see an increase in the NSO memberships overall, though this may have been coming. And it could also be possible the new Switch or Switch 2 or Super Nintendo Switch may release early enough in 2025 to where maybe Nintendo will still release it at $400 before any such tariffs take place. My overall takeaway, again, is just to remember that for us, currently living in this environment, is video games are a hobby. This means that not only does it mean to take what I say with a grain of salt, because I am, after all, talking about a hobby, and I'm not proclaiming myself an expert, but also to make sure that your spending is done judiciously. If belts are going to tighten, we should focus on buying the important things, and that often is, money on food and bills versus the newest video game console or title. And while I will mention that I'd like to start a conversation with you guys, I'm going to warn that any sniping or negativity or hell, any dictatorial love will be removed. If these price increases impact your bottom line, are you going to see your spending overall decrease in the video game market? Let me know in the comments section below. Are you still going to be purchasing the new Nintendo system? Are you going to get a snag PS5 Pro? I'm really curious. Love to have that conversation. But thanks again for watching, and we hope you have a great day.